The framework is complete. 3 laws, 7 boundary conditions, 6 tools. Layer 3, one institution at a time, each traced back to the guiding star before any proposal is evaluated. The first institution is not Congress, not the presidency, not the Supreme Court. It is the one that touches daily life more directly than any of them, and the one with the weakest direct accountability to the people it governs. Congress passes a law. The law sets direction. An agency fills in the details. Those details, called regulations, carry the force of law. A violation of an agency regulation can result in fines, criminal charges, or loss of license. The same consequences as violating a statute passed by elected representatives. The EPA writes the rules governing air quality standards. OSHA writes the rules governing workplace safety. The FDA writes the rules governing what goes into food and medicine. The FTC writes the rules governing competitive markets. Each agency was created by Congress. Each agency operates under statutory authority, and each agency is staffed by people who were never elected by the citizens those rules govern. That is not a conspiracy. That is the architecture. The independence was intentional. An agency insulated from direct political pressure can maintain consistent technical standards across administrations. The accountability gap works like this. A member of Congress writes a bad law. They can be voted out. A president makes a bad decision. They can be removed. A federal agency administrator writes a bad regulation. They serve at the pleasure of the president, who serves at the pleasure of the electorate, which means the feedback loop connecting the regulation to the people it governs runs through 2 layers of removal before it reaches anyone directly accountable. In practice, that distance is enough to insulate most rulemaking from meaningful public accountability. The people who write the rules that govern workplace safety, environmental standards, financial markets, and food production are effectively permanent. The rules they write accumulate. The accountability does not keep pace. Congress delegates rule-writing authority to agencies because legislation cannot anticipate every technical detail. A Clean Water Act cannot specify the acceptable parts per million of every possible contaminant in every possible body of water. An agency with technical expertise fills that in. That delegation was designed to be bounded. Agencies were supposed to fill in technical details within clear statutory limits. Over decades, the boundaries expanded. Agencies now write rules that go well beyond technical implementation. They make policy. The line between filling in details and making law has blurred to the point where it is often functionally invisible. When an agency writes a rule that goes beyond what Congress authorized, deciding policy that Congress never addressed rather than filling in the technical details of policy Congress did, the alignment audit has a finding. The rule has drifted beyond its statutory authority. That drift goes on the exploit ledger. A documented response is required. If these problems are this visible, why have they not been fixed? The answer is the systems producing the dysfunction also control the correction mechanism. Industries regulated by an agency have strong incentives to influence how that agency writes its rules. They have lobbyists, legal teams, and revolving door relationships with agency staff. The people the rules are designed to constrain are often the most influential voices in how the rules are written. The agency's rulemaking serves the agency's continuation and the interests of the regulated industry. The extractive loop runs here the same way it ran in the equitable sharing program. Not because anyone decided to corrupt it, because the incentive structure produces that outcome with anyone inside it. OSHA's Hazard Communication Standard was written in 1983 to require chemical manufacturers to label hazardous substances and provide safety data sheets to workers. In 2012, it was updated to align with a global standard. The underlying purpose, worker safety, did not change. The compliance framework expanded significantly. Small businesses faced significant new compliance costs to implement the same underlying safety requirement. The precision filter finds the vague language in the new compliance framework. The complexity ceiling flags the weight increase. The regulation added complexity beyond what the safety purpose required. The alignment audit confirms the original purpose is still present, but identifies the compliance burden on small businesses as a complexity cost that accumulated without a corresponding safety benefit. The patch. Carve out the small business compliance burden without compromising the safety standard. The two are separable. The alignment audit shows where. The exploit ledger requires the agency to document why it has not been done. Federal agencies increasingly use algorithmic systems to make consequential decisions: benefits eligibility, risk scoring, resource allocation. The people these systems affect have no direct recourse to the people who designed them. The accountability gap does not disappear when a human is replaced by an algorithm. It widens. The DSI's no black boxes function applies here directly. Every algorithmic decision with consequential impact on a citizen requires a visible logic path and a public audit trail. 3 structural fixes. None of them require eliminating the administrative state. All of them require it to operate within the same accountability architecture the DSI applies everywhere else. First, sunset clauses on all agency regulations. Every rule expires after a defined period unless affirmatively renewed. The agency must demonstrate the rule still does what it was designed to do. Rules that have drifted from their original purpose do not automatically survive the renewal. The alignment audit runs at each renewal point. Second, the complexity ceiling applies to the regulatory code. Agencies cannot add complexity without removing equivalent complexity. The 2 out 1 in rule governs agency rulemaking the same way it governs the broader regulatory system. Accumulation without a ceiling is what produced the OSHA compliance burden. The ceiling prevents reaccumulation. Third, the public exploit ledger covers agency rulemaking. Every identified drift from statutory authority, every vague standard, every complexity cost without a corresponding benefit goes on the record. The agency cannot ignore a ledger entry. It must respond. The accountability gap does not close entirely, but it narrows to the point where inaction is visible. Find a drift. Apply the ceiling. Put the findings on the record. I am the system architect. The administrative state is the first institution. It will not be the last. Next, the money that shapes who gets elected, who writes the laws, and who funds the agencies that implement them.